Hello, and welcome to the Coffee with Demons podcast, where everyone is welcome and no one is judged. On this podcast, we will explore the minds and the demons of individuals with different backgrounds, mindsets, and missions. My hope is that you walk away stronger than ever after listening to the stories of inspiration, empathy, and intellect that the Coffee with Demons podcast has to offer. Everyone battles demons, but no one has to do it alone. Now enjoy the content and savor the coffee. All right, so it looks like we're on the right track. Well, basically, I'm going to start out, and I'm going to kind of address the audience here a little bit. Today, I have with me Jordan Wordekemper, and I'm going to give you a couple reasons why he's on the podcast, and then I'm going to let him talk about why he's on the podcast as well, because he knows a little bit more than me. But me and Jordan have been good friends for our whole lives, pretty much, and he's one of the most driven, motivated, goal-oriented kids that I know, and he's definitely got his ducks in a row. So don't be afraid to brag a little bit, but just talk a little bit about your schooling, your education, and kind of where you're headed, what you've done, and where you want to go.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that intro there, Johnny. Yeah, like you said, we've known each other for quite a while, I'd say.
Definitely.
Both from a little town here in Nebraska, and grew up friends from elementary school up, through high school, through college. We have two different views on life, and we're going in two different fields, but in the end, we're trying to solve the same problem, I think. So I guess a little bit about my schooling. So yeah, I started high school. I wasn't really too sure what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to kind of do science, but I guess to my regard, I had three older siblings, and it was kind of easy for me to figure out what I wanted to do because my oldest siblings, they kind of laid the path for me. And when you're the youngest of three other siblings that are older than you, that it's pretty easy to follow in their footsteps.
Right.
And, that can be a bad thing. It can be a good thing. It depends on how you look at it. In my case, I think it's probably best for me. And, I found something that I loved. But it wasn't until this past year that I really found my passion for it and why I'm doing what I'm doing. I always had an idea, but we'll get into that a little bit later. And so before that, though, like getting into college, I always kind of, had a mask on, and there's a lot to me that people didn't know, and it's because I was afraid to talk about it. And this is like why I wanted to come on this podcast, because Coffee with Demons, I think it's a great outlet that, you're starting up, that, people need to recognize it, and that they need to recognize their demons, and, really sit down with it and talk to them and figure out what's going on and get it out there. And that's something I never did, and something I never realized that I needed to do. And so this is the whole process of this led me to where I am now, and I'm thankful for it. And I think that's a large proponent of what people miss out on, is that they don't look at it as a positive, like your past, even if it was bad or good. There's positive that comes out of everything. You just have to look at it in that light. And that's what people are lacking. And I think that hopefully people can resonate with my story and get from that what I guess I learned. And so for me to talk a little bit about that. So it's kind of hard for me just because this isn't something that I talk too much about, but I've learned to accept it, and it needs to be said, and like I said, people need to hear it, and hopefully people can recognize it. So I grew up in a household that I had a single parent. My parents divorced when I was 1, remarried, and divorced again. So I've been through the whole single parent, double parent, and back to single parent household. I lived through that. I saw the ups and the downs. That definitely affects your children, and I'm grateful for my past, and it's put me to the position where I'm at now. But what a lot of people don't know is that my mom was an alcoholic, and I went through that. I saw it was her sitting on the couch just belligerently drunk. I'd come home from school, and my mom was drunk, she was drinking again, or she would be talking to another guy, whatever it may be. I came home to that, and that leads to something that I call like a damaged personal truth. And this really took me a long time to figure out, and I found outlets to hide it, and to put something over put a mask on, basically. And people don't recognize it, and it took me a while to recognize it. It took me, like I said, about 2 years ago to figure out what I was doing.
Right.
And so this damaged personal truth that I talk about here is, I like to classify as something you think about, you're constantly second class to somebody else. So what I mean by that is, I knew what was going on at home the night before. I knew that a week ago, or this whole past week, my mom was drinking, or, hypothetically, say somebody else is out there and they're in an abusive household. They know that they're at home and that they were beat, or that their parents were like her mom was beat or whoever it may be or whatever may be going on. And so when you go into school and you see this person sitting next to you in class who has this iron shirt on, they're talking about all these indulgent experiences they were on. They went to this trip. They did that. Now you feel second class to the social mask that somebody else has on. They're putting this social mask out there and you feel like you're second class. And so what you think of and what you feel like you deserve is what you're going to get in the end. So if you feel like you deserve a second class result, you're going to get a second class result. And I think that what I did is I looked to fitness because I thought that, if I got into this fitness world and if I physically changed my body, I'd be able to bridge the gap. I could close this gap on the second class feeling that I had, sitting next to all these different people that were great around me, all these friends, all these, peers, even older people, I'd see them and I just felt second class and I didn't want to feel that anymore. And so like I said, I got into fitness and I wanted to change that. And so I worked out for 4 years and, I became that guy that, he cared about the muscle. He cared about looking as best as he could. Like, what does somebody think of me? What did they think of me? And so that got to a point where like, I was that one, that guy that tried to push off his values. I talked about the gym a lot. I talked about what I could work out. Oh, it limited me on different things. Like it limited me on aspects of like, I wouldn't hang out with certain people. I wouldn't do certain things because I was so concerned with what it was going to do to my body. I was so concerned with what it was going to affect me in the gym the next day. Even that goes to alcohol. Sometimes I wouldn't even go out and party. And people would be like, oh, like, just have fun, let loose. And in my head, I'm like, gosh, I would really like to do that. But, deep down, I'm like, no, I can't because, I don't want to set myself back. Mm-hmm. I've came this far. I don't want to set myself back. Why would I do that? And so it wasn't until a couple of years ago that I really, going through and losing friends or relationships, whatever it may be, like set me on my path. Like it just set me in my place. It set me like to stop and stand still and just look back and be like, what am I doing? I haven't ever reached that light at the end of the tunnel. It's still there. I'm still pushing for something that I haven't fixed. And so what I like to say it as is it's kind of like a marathon. Like, it doesn't matter how fast you finish the marathon as long as you finish it. And so if my subconscious is coming along with me, and it doesn't matter if I finish the marathon in 3 hours, if my subconscious comes in 6 hours, it's still coming. It doesn't matter if I get out of the way. It's still coming back to haunt me. Like I can run and I can bridge this gap of this second class feeling, but that subconscious and that feeling, that mentality of like knowing that you're second class, it's still there. And so it wasn't until like I faced it and like I really started talking to people about it and that I opened up and thought that it was okay to talk about this and like this whole stigma of it, that it's not there and that you need to break that thinking that because if you have that thought, then you're always going to be running from it. You need to take that mentality and that feeling of like second class and anything like that, any mental problems, you need to take it out of the race. Otherwise, it's still going to be running after you. It's still going to be trying to get to that finish line. And when it does, you'll be there tired. And I guarantee you, no matter how hard you work, you're going to get tired at one point that thing's going to catch back up to you. You need to get it out of that race. I'll tell you that right now. And I learned that, and it really did help. So that's where I like it. That's what led me into fitness. But back to the schooling. So that's where I was at, like 2 years into college. And then until I figured that out, it kind of like led me to my passion of like what I want to do in medicine. And so that's kind of like my upbringing, like how I got here and like why I wanted to be on this. And like, hopefully that resonates with some people and hopefully we can get into some more details here.
And we definitely will. And even that little excerpt of you just talking right there, I think is so self-actualization is a giant part in growth. And I will always think that. And even for you to come out and be able to, share that story and even, face those demons, realize that that's what it was. And that's why you were doing things. Although, from my point of view, I never had any, to me, you were Jordan Wordekemper.
Yeah.
You were a smart kid.
Yeah.
You had everything going for you. Right. And it's crazy that I just put out a blog called Demons Amongst Daisies.
That, yeah.
And it just kind of like what you said. Mm-hmm. So for you to everything's fine on the outside from my perspective, like you had it going. I mean, you were, and I've been always into fitness too. Like, and we've always worked out together, and I've always envied. I mean, you were always pushing weight. You were always, your physique was on point. Your eating was on point. Your intellect was always on point. So for me, from an outsider's view, I was just so like almost starstruck at this kid, this kid who had everything together, and you just being able to talk about, those demons amongst those daisies, just knowing that, yeah, people might look like they have it all together, and they might have it together, and they might have control of it, but there are those demons, and people definitely need to, wake up and help the guy next to you, because everyone's got problems. But
right, and talking about that, you said that you had this viewpoint of me, you had this image, and that was a big problem for me. That's why it was so hard for me to come out about this, is because so many people, everybody that knows me, seriously, 95% of the people that know me have that image, which you just said. They portray me to be this person he's got his stuff together. Look at it. He'll be successful in the end. He's smart. He gets 95s on everything. And so I had that in my mind, and I knew that I needed to live up to that, because if I didn't, I failed everybody and I failed myself, because I didn't want to fail anybody else. And so I constantly had this 100-pound weight just pulling me down. People be asking me, oh, how'd you do on this? How'd you do that? People were caring more than I cared myself. And so it made me care. That's why, I'm grateful for it, because it pushed me. It put a fire under me for sure. But it also was so exhausting. Always trying to live up to this image that I've never felt that I could. I pushed myself. I figured that out, and I think it's largely because of how I grew up, and being that alcoholic parent that I was under, because it forced me to grow up a lot faster than what I was supposed to. And it made me look to solve my own problems, because I knew that my mom wasn't going to be able to solve them for me. I needed to figure out my own solutions, and I needed to, either find external satisfaction or figure it out on my own. And if I couldn't, then there was nobody to guide me. And so I had to figure out how to guide myself. And so I got a lot of that, that satisfaction and rewards from other people complimenting me and being like, wow, you're so smart, or wow, look, you're going to do such great things. Even the teachers, I would get satisfaction from them saying, oh, you're going to do such great things in the future, even in high school. And I never, ever, ever wanted to live that, let anybody down. And so it was so hard for me to come out about it. But, I can't live for anybody else. Definitely. And that's the main thing, is that you have to live for yourself first. Otherwise, you're always going to be, pulling that weight behind you. You got to let that thing go.
Definitely.
So
I think, exactly. I agree with everything you're saying. It's definitely a double-ended sword, trying to please everybody. But there also is this point. It's a good driving factor to a point, but there's definitely a point of almost diminishing returns. So how, when does other people's viewpoints of me, or how much I care about them, start to affect how I'm living my life? But yeah, so talk a little bit about, because I know we're going to get into some pretty medical stuff. So talk about your degree, kind of where you're headed, because I know, even though it might be, like you said about your past is what makes you. Yeah. And I definitely think that you learning and growing from your past is a great thing. But I don't think that you need to, or I don't think that it's right for yourself to pick on yourself almost, and say that, that's because you are intelligent. And I think the world needs, more intelligence, more compassion. And so I think those things are always great.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, so talk a little bit about your schooling.
Yeah. Okay. So, like I said, I'm in college. I wanted to do science. I didn't really know exactly. Like I said, I had the feel of my brother, because he got into medical school, and I was like, well, darn, that sounds kind of cool. I think I'd be able to change a lot. That sounds like something I'd want to get into. And so I started doing science, and I had that feeling of everybody wanted me to do this. They expected me to become a physician, but that was there, but it didn't drive me in the main. It was there, but it wasn't the reason I wanted to do it.
So sorry to cut you off, but a little just quick question. Mine was, you talk about how people's opinions of you kind of drove that, and growing up, even in elementary school, it's almost driven into us that doctors, or there's I guess there's jobs and there's occupations that are set above others. So that would be your white collar to your blue collar, or your lawyers and doctors. Yeah. So I was just going to ask you, do you think that had an impact on you wanting to go into medicine, just to say
because
that you
it was
have
the field and it had such a title to it?
Exactly. So do you think?
I think maybe down deep it did, but I don't think that was the driving factor for me, because that's I mean, it's hard to say because
Right.
that's something that it does, you have to find the reason. Like I said, we'll talk about the passion, why I'm getting into medicine later on here, but I think it might have, but I'm not going to say that everything, it did completely. Yeah. There's just so many different things that all ball up into one thing that gets the ball rolling, then the whole thing goes downhill and just starts cascading, and then you really find where you want to be. But I think that might have had something to do with it. But you're definitely right. There is certain titles and statuses that people like want to live up to, and then they want to get there, and they feel like the happiness is going to come from that. And that's the thing that this is a good point, because I thought that about that whole like title, but then you have to recognize, so I'm going to school for 8 more years after college at minimum. If I want to become a surgeon, it could be another 9 years. It depends on what I want to do. I don't know yet, but once I get into that field, am I going to be happy with that title? No, you're not going to get happiness from your career. You need to still find happiness from, your family life, doing things like, you might feel very like relieved, I'm a doctor now. I have this title, but at the end of the day, like, that's not going to bring you happiness. Just like people talk about, oh, money doesn't bring you happiness. People that don't have money, like, oh, I don't believe that. If I had this much more money, I guarantee I'd be happy. No, but then the people that are up there that do have the money, they look down and like, oh, but you don't understand. You can't relate. It really doesn't give you happiness. Like, things are so external. Like, you think in the moment it's going to make you happy, but that's not true. You have to find true happiness in hobbies, just meeting people, talking to people, and finding like something that actually truly makes you happy for the long run, that will never exhaust its happiness level. And so I think that, like you said about the whole title status thing, definitely had something to do with it, but it also like made me recognize the fact that once I get there, like, if I'm not truly passionate about that job, then why am I going into it? Because that happiness will fade, and that like whole title thing will fade. That's a career I'm going to be in for 30 years more whenever I retire. Who knows? So I don't think that in its entirety that led me, but it probably like made me look at it with a different light and say, okay, am I going to really be truly happy doing this? Like, can I find happiness somewhere else? Am I doing it for that reason, or am I doing it for the right reasons? And I definitely leaned, I'm more like 95% or 100% on the side, like, I'm doing it for the right reasons, because it made me like look at it in that light. So I think definitely like I took it into account, but it like made me like find my true passion for it and say that, okay, I'm not going to only be happy from this.
Yeah, and like I was saying about, facing those demons, I think that I'm stoked to get into this podcast just because, one, you're, the ideal guest, because to me that what you said about the money thing kind of sticks out, because to me, I agree, or I agree with you, but I can see where people think that money is going to make you happy, but I can't go talk to somebody who has millions. But for you, I mean, you've kind of went through in a different way, and I hope that you don't get offended by this at all. But so, I mean, we started working out together. Yeah. And then you were definitely, one of the, by bodybuilding standards, had one of the best physiques of kids that I knew. And then just like a case study for you to kind of be able to tell people your story and say, because I know you were working for that. I know you're driving for that. And you wanted to be the biggest. You wanted to be the strongest. And then once you were there, it was kind of like, what, I was
still searching.
Exactly.
It
so
never, like I said about the marathon, it was still in the race.
Exactly. So that little, just that is equivalent to me thinking money is going to solve things, and not. So just another real life example, and I think that's why you're going to be perfect for this podcast. So
but I'll continue with the old the education here. So like I said, in college here, I wanted to do science instead of like my brothers and stuff. Like, I got into the medical field, so it kind of drove me. And then this whole like passion, like finding like, why do I want to become a doctor? If my brother's doing it, like, do I want to do that? Am I doing it for the right reasons? Because anytime you tell someone you're going to become a doctor, they always talk about money. That's the first thing that someone talks to me about. Like, whenever I say, oh yeah, I'm going to medical school. Oh wow, you're going to be making this much money. That's not why I'm doing it. And I will explain why I'm doing it here in a little bit. But so I got that degree with biology from the university, undergraduate. And then I did minors in psychology and biochemistry, but it wasn't the education. Like, I learned a lot more out of school than I did in, almost, because of my own research, and just like the personal experiences I've had. I feel like I've gained so much more just from the experience of being in college than I did from the reading of the textbooks. If that kind of makes sense.
Definitely.
So, but I guess in terms of working out and stuff like that, like you were talking about, like physiques and things like that, people labeled me as that, and that's the stigma I'm still trying to break. Is that, and we'll talk about this transition still, but even to this day, people look at me as this meathead. They're like, "Oh, how much are you gonna lift?" or like, "How much are you gonna eat?" Like, no, I'm not that guy. I don't ever push my values off onto anybody. And people that do that, they're trying to validate their reasons and and make up for their mental problems, and like finding like they're bringing their self-esteem up because they don't feel like, if nobody's talking about how big I am, then they must not notice it. And so I did that. I used to do that. I used to talk about it because I didn't have that self-esteem in myself to not talk about it. Because if nobody was talking about it, then maybe they aren't noticing. And if nobody's noticing, that hurts my feelings because I put in all this work for it to like hide my insecurities,
right.
And nobody's noticing it. So I want somebody to talk about it. And that's a big problem. That's not who I am. I will never push my values off into anybody unless somebody comes up to me and asks me a question. And that's a big like problem that we have like with working out. Like people instantly affiliate me with that. And that's not me. I love health. I love exercise. I love living a nice and like completely just sound lifestyle. It makes me feel great, and I truly think that it is something that's lacking today, is that people have these different viewpoints. Who knows, it might be because of social media, I don't know, because these social masks that are on in social media, you constantly see that. You never feel like you can compare yourself, or like you're never good enough to that, because what someone's posting on social media, that's just a glimpse into like how they posed where they were at, or how they posed for this. That's not their true lifestyle. They're still hurting if something's going on. And actually, I'd like to talk about like the whole, like, because I know like Coffee with Demons has a lot to do with Alcohol Anonymous, and just like depression stigmas, and like, should people be talking about it? Is this something like equivalent to heart disease, where like it's so like it's okay to go around and say you have heart disease, like people feel bad for you, like what are you doing to fix it? But if you go around and say you have depression, is somebody gonna look at you weird?
Right.
Like, let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so basically, definitely taking off of AA, the point of communicating with other people who have the same demon or similar demons, like Alcoholics Anonymous. It works really well because people sit down and they talk to other alcoholics that have been through similar things, and have found ways to come over that, or get over that. And then, then again, just being with other people and having that support around you. So basically what I'm trying to do with Coffee with Demons is just that. And like I said in my recent blog, I'm not trying to make it cool to be depressed or to be hurting, but I am trying to make it cool to come out and get the help that you need and deserve. And I think that that's a big point. And like you were saying, there's a big stigma behind mental health. And if you say you're like depressed, people are gonna. I mean, some people have this,
they do.
Whatever
it's there for sure.
Whatever they're gonna think about you. But I'm also not trying to just target the clinically depressed people or the people that do need actual medication and actual. Well, I guess we'll get into that later. But
I'd like to talk about that right now. Actually.
Okay, we'll talk about
that. So you were talking about medication, and this, I think. Okay, so mental illness and stuff. There's definitely stigma. Like I 1,000% agree. But the problem is, so is it more prevalent now, or is it more prevalent in the past, or is it because in the past only MDs and PhDs could be psychiatrists and various forms of that, anything with like psychology. But now you have all these different outlets and all these different subsets. So maybe it's more prevalent because it's easier access. I don't know. But the problem with medications, you go to the doctor and, they sit down with you for 15 minutes and they prescribe you a pill. Maybe it's an SSRI or something like that. It doesn't matter what it is, but they're trying to replace this biochemical process in your body with a hormone that you have to determine if it's exogenous or endogenous. The doctor didn't even sit down and try to figure that out with you. If it's endogenous and your hormone levels are actually low, then okay, take the pills and stuff like that to get that back up, but then get off of it. Don't stay on. They're not meant to stay on forever, because pain is the best motivator to get you to go wherever you want to be. If you're standing on somewhere hot, you're gonna move. Definitely. And so if your life's in the trash and like there's stuff going on, like you got a divorce, of course it's gonna hurt. Of course it is. That's normal. That's what you're going through. That is your reaction. That is to let you know that what you are like, what's going on is not okay, and you don't want to go through it again. You have to let pain motivate you. Don't suppress that. And so too many people often, like even now, like even drugs in general and just, chewing tobacco, alcohol, things like that, people move to that because they're trying to run away from the pain. Like I just talked to someone just recently about how they work hard physical labor and then they throw some chewing tobacco in to get rid of that pain. And it's like, gosh, man, that was a hard day. And like, I was like, so you use the tobacco to get rid of the pain? He goes, yeah, man, I was so tired. Why did you do that? Sit there, relish in that pain, and just look at what you did and say, wow, like I accomplished that. Like, I don't want to go through that again. Do I really want to be working this? Or do I'll bust my butt to move up in this ladder to not have to sit here in this position that I'm at right now. I will bust my butt to get out of where I'm at right now. Like that pain is a motivator that you do not want to suppress. So there is a place for medication, but I think they're being given out like candy right now, and too many people are stuck on them. Right. That they feel like they can't like get off them because the doctors aren't telling you, okay, so take this for this many weeks, and then we're gonna have this plan to wean you off of it. Right. We're gonna wean you off of it. No, I mean I don't personally know that. Like I hope that's out there, but I don't know. And so too many people are like sticking with them because obviously. Even like depression. So with depression, there's something called psychomotor retardation, which comes with depression, where basically you don't want to like leave your house. You kind of want to stay in your own little like ball. You want to stay alone. You don't want to go out. Your thinking's impaired. Various things are impaired. And so when you're stuck in like your house and you're not going out, you're not getting rewarded for anything. You're not getting that satisfaction, like those constant like interactions with people, like those little social cues that reward you that you don't recognize on a daily basis that are like, kind of motivating you, like, wow, that feels really good. You're not getting that. So you're not getting these constant like strokes from society and things like that, and just being interactions with people. And so if you don't take that medicine, those medications that they give you to get out and like actually like interact with people and make up for those like strokes and get those rewards from people, then you're going to be, obviously you're still going to be depressed. But if you use that medication to like get out of the house, do things like, get your thinking up, like, and then make a plan while you're in a good status of mind to get off those pills, and then start weaning off them, then I think that's like a good plan of action in order to get out of that like bind. Instead of just, I'm going to turn to medicine and then I'm not even going to make a plan out of it, or I'm not going to take any medicine, I'm just going to sit alone at home. And the problem with depression is that they don't like to talk to people because they don't want to pull them into their loneliness. They don't want to be a burden to anybody else. But if you're hurting, people really want to know. Like they want you to talk to them about it. And like the problem with also depression is that you don't feel like anybody can relate to you because you feel like you shouldn't feel the way that you're feeling, but it's a chemical process that's occurring in your brain. So no matter if you don't want to hurt or not, you're going to hurt. And so you need to recognize what's truly going on, and that's not your fault. And that if there's something actually going on, you need to seek help, but then you also need to make a plan to get off of that help and find your own motivation and recognize the pain and then move on from it.
Yeah, I think everything you said was pretty spot on. Everything that I was just going to add is kind of, just icing on the cake, but I do think there's space for medication, but because like in my case, people probably looked at me and they were like, oh, Johnny Geethline, he's got it made, he's popular, he's got it made, and to me, I would take that, and kind of like you, I would take that and I'm like, everything's right, why am I feeling like this? And it's messed up when chemicals in your brain don't, those synapses don't
work right,
they don't fire, and so I do think there is room for medication, but I do agree that it's it needs to be used right in a supervised kind of setting. So to go back to the Alcoholics Anonymous thing, I was just going to say that Coffee with Demons, I'm not trying to target people that because I don't think that I could fix somebody who and I don't even like that, trying to fix somebody, but basically what I'm trying to say is Coffee with Demons meetings, they're not just for people who are clinically depressed or have that lack of chemicals in their brain. And you said it perfectly. Like if you go through a divorce, you go through a breakup, a family member dies, everyone gets sad. Everyone has that flood of emotion, and I'm trying to make Coffee with Demons a enlightening experience for anyone who comes. And even if you don't have those problems, you come and help other people. And I think just the world needs more compassion, needs more creativity in a sense of just doing what you want to do. for yourself, because I do think there needs to be this sense, a little bit of, selfishness, because it is your life. You only have one time to live it, so you might as well, be happy.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of segueing into the next. Do you want to talk a little bit? Actually, you know what? We'll just kind of take a break there, and we'll be right back.
All right.
You are listening to the Coffee with Demons podcast, but CWD isn't just a podcast. It's a human collective focused on issues surrounding mental stability, healing, and battling your inner demons. Our mission is to provide new, alternative, and easy-to-access mental health help for those stuck in life's dark times. CWD is a hub where everyone is welcome and no one is judged. Check us out at www.coffeewithdemons.com. All right, so we are back. I'm going to talk a little bit about Coffee with Demons. Jordan wants to know a little bit about the Alcoholics Anonymous side to it. And like I said, Alcoholics Anonymous does a fantastic job of bringing people together who have the same issue and just bouncing ideas off each other. And that's kind of what I want for these, Coffee with Demons isn't trying to follow a 12-step program. So It's not going to be like you do this, this, this.
So it doesn't have a spiritual affiliation?
Well, no, I wouldn't, I try and keep, I would say, spiritual affiliation in a sense of, I don't know, I hate to push people away with my religious beliefs or even talk about religion because it is such a...
So is there a big proponent on it, though? Because, that could steer people away or it could attract people. It depends, because there's definitely a positive and a negative to it, because if someone's not into spirituality and things like that, then or religious beliefs, and they're not going to want to do it. But a large proponent of Alcohol Anonymous or AA is that they treat alcoholism as a disease, a biological disease that, you can find redemption in God, or you can find redemption in, you can repent your sins. And this is something that basically it takes the burden of this issue out that you had no control over, it feels like. So now it feels like a biological problem that you can fix. Like it wasn't your fault. That's what it makes it feel like. And that, you were just more predisposed to it.
Right.
And, you can repent these sins to God or whatever religion it may be, and he can basically, heal you of it. And so people find satisfaction and security in that they can look to a greater being and find this way to, I guess, talk to somebody and confess their sins and get over to, because they feel like these sins are just any other sin of humanity is what they kind of preach in alcohol or AA, excuse me. And you were right about the whole kinship and finding this fighting through something together is a big proponent of AA. And I think that you basically touched on that with CWD, Coffee with Demons, but I guess, talk a little bit more about the spirituality and what your idea of it is, what the drawback or what you're going to do with it, or...
Well, I definitely think that drawback's a good word, because there will be drawbacks because, the super religious or non-religious people might be put off because there isn't that proponent to it. And I'm not trying to steer away from religion, but I am trying to get people to believe that they're not their own God, but they do make their own thoughts, and you can believe whatever you want to believe and help yourself to whatever point you're willing to help yourself. So I guess the only thing I really have to say to that is I just believe in, I believe in caring for other people, helping humanity, loving others. And then the only thing that, I kind of struggle with this myself is I do really care about helping people, but at what, and this is a demon that I still kind of still am not as open about, but at what point do I have to realize or, say to myself that maybe I just want to help people because other people will look at me and be like, oh, that guy's a good guy. Yeah. And that's not why I do things, because I could care less what people think. I could care less if people, think I'm helping or not. But if people can come to the meetings and just take a little bit of happiness away, a little bit of better, a little bit more light, and go out into the world, and even if it's just holding a door for another person, or just being a shoulder to lean on, I think that's where Coffee with Demons is going to come into play. But yeah, I guess with spirituality, I mean, I welcome all people of all beliefs, non-believers as well, because like I said, no matter what you believe happens after we're here, I think that they need to realize that they shouldn't put off the time that we do have here. So I'm just trying to make that as good as I can for people.
So I know you plan on doing these meetings in just coffee shops and various things. So how are you going to get people to basically be like, step out of their comfort zone and talk about this issue that people are in a public place? Because usually AAs are in a church or they're, somewhere like to close where they know it's just going to be people that are going through the similar issue. But then when you're in a public place, and once you get your name out there, people are going to start looking at you like, oh, that's the CW with D group, or however you're going to get people to basically be attracted to the idea of talking about this in a public place. Or maybe that's a part of the healing process of like getting out there and like talking in a public place and like stepping out and be like, okay, I need to step out of my comfort zone and see all these other people that are also stepping out of their comfort zone. Like, is that like, what is your aspect on that?
So what I have to say to that is basically, I don't expect people to come and open up fully like you have, or like other guests that I hope will on the podcast, but I do hope people come and share. And it might be as little as, I've been through some shit, and this is what I did to help myself. And whether that's art, whether that's music, whether that's sports, fitness, being creative in any way, finding whatever medium you have, somebody might not have tried that, and then we'll take that away from the meeting and go try it and help themselves a little bit more. But yeah, that's definitely going to be, a limitation to some people, is that, and even me, this is even a little bit stressful for me, just being in a room, and to go out and, speak those words in front of a group of people, I'm definitely, I still have thoughts like, what do these people think? Am I saying the right things? But at some point I do think, and I think communication, opening up is some of the best medicine, just to feel that, have that relief off of your back. So
I can attest to that, because honestly, if I wouldn't have ever done that, I would be the exact same person that I didn't want to be 2 years ago. I didn't want to be that guy, and if I wouldn't have opened up and talked to people about it, I promise you I'd still be that guy, because it never made me truly face. I thought I could just face it in my head. No, I can't. No, believe me, I tried for 4 years. And no, you cannot. You have to let that out, and the only way is to talk about it with people, and or find your solace somewhere else, or figure it out. But find what you're good at and invest your time into it. But you gotta face them.
I agree, and I was the same way. I was never one to go out and talk about my issues, and my dad's a psychologist, and I get a little psychology at home every once in a while. He always drops some wisdom on me. So shout out Papa Geethline. But the only thing that I would really have to say again is just, you wouldn't even have to come to a meeting and say anything. But if you can take something away, that's
that's the first step.
Yeah, that's the first step. And this is a advertisement, a platform for case studies like you, or just people to share their stories and attest to the relief that they found in facing those demons, and I think that'll bring a lot of attention to.
Yeah, and that's why I'm sitting here doing this right now, is because I truly believe, and reading through your site and reading your blogs, it's something that you are dead on the money. Like, you've got.
Well, I appreciate that.
Got everything that like people really need. Like, they can resonate with you, and if there was something like this 6 years ago, I mean, I would have been terrified. I would have been like,
same.
I don't know about that,
right?
Man. I don't know if I can do that, but. If I could have, I guarantee you that if anyone's out there that is having troubles or anything like that, do take that step, because you will not regret it. Believe me. Like, I wish I would have done that earlier, because I wouldn't have wasted all that time. And nothing against it, because like I said, it wasn't terrible those past 6 years or whatever it may be, but I just wish I would have took strides sooner, because there's no reason to suffer for so long when there's help out there.
Yeah, and even like we were talking about before, I don't ever think it's not a means to an end, because you're not ever going to be happy 100% of the time, and you're not ever going to feel 100 all the time. So I just think that meetings are for everybody. No matter what state you're in, if you're happy, I think you get some from them. If you're sad, I think you get some from them. Yeah. Awesome. I appreciate the questions on that and letting me talk a little bit about that. So I have a question for you, but it's just basically, what is your end goal with your direction in health and wellness? And I think that'll kind of allow us to branch out. But for me, CWD is a platform, and it allows me to help others so they can find whatever they need through it. But I know that, whatever little bit of light I can shine. So if you want to talk about your direction, kind of the end goal, and I just contradicted myself. But
I got you. So this is a long process here that I guess I'm going to kind of go through, but it's my end goal after medical school. It's hard to say because there's so many different specialties, and there's going to be so many more by the time I graduate, and then by the time I go through residency, who knows what subspecialty there will be. After finding my passion for medicine, truly, I'm kind of trying to figure out, do I want to be a surgeon? Do I want to be family medicine? Because if I'm just a surgeon and say that there's new technology coming out all the time. There's new technology. There's Da Vinci machines that just came out a while ago, and that surgeons don't even need to sit in the room anymore when they do that. And I had my laparoscopic surgery done with a Da Vinci machine when I had a hernia from working out. That, stuff like that. And so if I'm a surgeon and I'm just going through the motions and I'm knocking out 1,500 surgeries, yeah, I'm a great surgeon. I have a good chance of, success, low recovery rates and stuff like that. And it doesn't take very long for people to recover from me when I do my surgeries and various things. I'm a great surgeon. But what am I changing? What am I changing in the medical field? What impact am I truly doing that, I've changed my life, and how am I truly changing someone else's life? I'm bringing them in and I'm sending them out the door. And I don't want to do that. I want to take the full aspect of someone. I want to change them. I want to fix the problems in medicine that there is today, because I've experienced them. I've experienced them when I've gone to the doctor, and I've heard other people who's experienced them. My mom's experienced them, and it's unbelievable the problems we're facing today. And people, they don't recognize it because they attest doctors to know everything. And unless you truly know what's going on, I'm not saying I do, and that's a big part here, is I don't want people to think that I'm a doctor, or, I'm only 23 right now, and I don't know everything. I'm still learning, and I'm going to be learning for the rest of my life. I'm a lifelong learner, and that's an important aspect here. But so I don't know everything, but there's things that are occurring that are wrong, and I know that. That is something I do know. And for an example, so we'll just go. So I was diagnosed with numeral eczema, which is just it's a chronic skin rash. 3 months ago, and I saw 2 primary care physicians. I saw a dermatologist, and I saw an immunologist, and the 2 primary care physicians had no idea what it was. I thought I had celiac disease, and guess what? I wasn't even eating gluten for those whole 3 months. I'm gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, and we'll get into that here in a little bit and why I am, because I practice what I preach, and I know the research behind it, and that's the reason why. But I wasn't even eating gluten. I told the doctor, he goes, well, we'll just test for the transglutaminase enzyme regardless. And I go, no, and I left. And so I got the referral for the dermatologist, who, mind you, this dermatologist a year prior, I saw for my keratosis pilaris, which is otherwise termed as chicken skin, which is just little red dots that can appear on your skin or your arms, usually, on the back of your arms or your triceps. Had that my whole life. Not curable, they told me. It was a chronic condition. He gave me Accutane. And me, being the science, deep into science and health and lifestyle in general, I was very weary of this, because Accutane, you always attest Accutane as having all these terrible side effects. And so he told me basically you'll take it once every other day for a week, for every single week it'll be, so 3 times a week for a year, or for however long it takes. And so I took that for a year, and I got off it myself. Didn't ask the doctor. I weaned off it myself. I just completely cut it actually cold turkey, because you don't really need to wean off Accutane. But I changed my diet. And so anyways, getting back to the dermatologist, I went into the dermatologist to see about my eczema, and which at the time I didn't know was eczema. The primary care physician thought it was, like I said, celiac disease or contact dermatitis, because I like to work out and do exercise. And so obviously you're touching a lot of different surfaces that have bacteria from people sweating. There's urea in sweat, which is in urine. So, sweat's gross, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So that was possible. That was possible, right? Oh, yeah. Urea's in sweat. So don't think that, anyone pees on you, it's any different than getting sweated on. Okay. But anyway, so going back to this, so they thought it was contact dermatitis or celiac disease. No way. So it was a recurring symptom that was on the upper extremities. I saw a dermatologist. He walks in. He tells me, "Oh, that's numeral eczema." Didn't even test me for it. And I was like, "Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I've never had eczema before." You asked me. He goes, "Well, did you have eczema when you were a kid?" I go, "No." He goes, "Did you and your family have eczema?" I go, "No." He goes, "Well, still numeral eczema." I go, "Okay." I go, "Why?" He goes, "Oh, it's just something that happens. It's just atopic dermatitis, which is just irregular, basically inflammation on the skin." And in my case, it's upper extremities. A lot of people get eczema. They think about eczema as like this skin rash, like dry skin in the back of like your knees or in your armpits or in your elbows or on your neck. But mine was numeral, so they kind of look like bug bites. So I was kind of like, I don't know about this. And so I wanted to know more. And then, mind you, this dermatologist that gave me the Accutane for the keratosis pilaris, he goes, "Wow, your keratosis pilaris is gone." I go, "Yeah, I stopped Accutane a year ago." He goes, "Oh, really?" He goes, "The Accutane, was it working?" I go, "No, it wasn't. I took it for a year. It didn't do anything. I changed my diet and I fixed it myself." He goes, "Oh, that's fantastic." Didn't even acknowledge it. Okay, whatever. So then I go to the immunologist because I wanted to know more. And I was like, well, okay, there's clearly something that's going on in my body that's causing this eczema to flare up out of nowhere when I'm 23 years old that I never had before in my entire life. No family history, nothing like that. There's something going on here internally, and I wanted to know why. And I figured if I go to an immunologist, he's going to take a blood test. He's going to figure out what is causing this allergic reaction, because clearly it was hive-like, so it had a lot of like itchiness to it, and so there's something going on internally. So I go to this immunologist and walk in. First thing he does, he's like, "Oh, so you saw a dermatologist. What did he prescribe you with or diagnose you with?" Excuse me. And I said, "Well, he said numeral eczema." And so this doctor's Googling on his iPhone while he's diagnosing me, talking to me, taking my like a good patient history, everything. He's Googling it, and I'm sitting there like, "Are you serious?" I go, I can Google numeral eczema, thank you." And so he basically, like I said, he's diagnosed me from his iPhone, and then he proceeds to basically say, "Okay, yep, it's numeral eczema. We're going to prescribe you these 2 steroidal creams just so your insurance company can see it. And then I'm going to basically prescribe you," because this is the process we have to go through, he says. "And then I'm going to prescribe you this biologic, which is basically it downregulates something in your body." So then in my case, it was going to downregulate something called interleukin 6 and interleukin 4, which is just basically an inflammation response, and it deals with the immune system, but we're not going to get too deep into the science. But and I knew what that did just from school. So this biologic, which is a shot that he told me I had to take every other week for the rest of my life, because it's a chronic condition, eczema, or just, because it basically builds up. It's kind of like, when people think about nasal sprays where it doesn't work to begin with, you have to keep taking it. That's what he basically taught. That was his description of it to me. And so at this point in time, I'm thinking, so you are basically tricking the insurance company so you can prescribe me this when I haven't even tried an antihistamine over the counter, like Benadryl. Haven't even tried that. I told him that. I go, "I haven't even tried an antihistamine." He goes, "Yeah, but this will work." And I recognized the fact that he was trying to make money off of me, and for this drug that I had to inject intraperitoneally, so into my stomach with this spring-loaded syringe every other week until it went away, basically, or I was better, or for the rest of the time that I had eczema. And so I basically told him no, and I wanted to know information on this. And so I looked at the pamphlet and all the side effects and things that came from it. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. And the doctor scoffed at me, laughed, because he knew that I was going into medical school, and he thought that I was kind of like this, know-it-all kid, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so the nurse walks in with her syringes and looks at me, laughed at me, literally laughed at me. And I go, "Are you kidding me?" That's what I said. I go, "Are you serious?" And so I walked out of the doctor's office without anything. I left his script there that he prescribed me for the 2 steroid creams, walked out, and texted my brother about it because he just graduated with a family medicine. And now he's in his residency. I said, "Is this what seriously the medical field's like?" He goes, "Yeah, welcome to the medical field. There's a problem. And so this is what I want to fix, because it is ridiculous." And guess what I did? I did my own research, and I cured my eczema, my keratosis pilaris, without doctor's help. I'm not saying that doctors aren't needed, because guess what? I'm going into the medical field, but I'm saying that there's a disparity out there, and it needs to be fixed. And if I can not do surgery, and if I can become a family medicine doctor, I'm not saying that's what I want to do, but I'm very feeling strongly towards it. If I can go in and I can change a little thing like this and start looking at lifestyle and diet and things like that, if I can heal myself at 23 years old, when a doctor wouldn't even take his time to actually ask me questions about my diet, then that's a problem. And I want to fix that. And I want to be that holistic doctor that can look at you and truly see, okay, so what's going on? I'm not going to prescribe you medicine unless you truly need it. And those shots that he would try to give me cost $37,000 a year. Unbelievable.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Unbelievable. I'm still upset about it. It is unbelievable. There's a problem. And so that's a large proponent. That is my passion. That's what I want to like do in medicine. I want to change what is going on. There is a problem. Even in Florida right now, or there were certain clinics that people, like doctors out of the country, would fly in. Then people with back pain would come in. They wouldn't even need a script or anything or a referral, nothing. They would come into the clinic, and then a doctor would prescribe 90 counts of opioids to these people that they said, oh, my back hurts. Without anything. They could just walk in off the street, and these doctors would do it. They'd prescribe it. They'd get their money from the drug company, and they'd fly out that same day in Florida. And these are getting shut down now, but that is another problem. Opioids, obviously. But so that's kind of like my viewpoint, and I kind of got into a ramble there. But it's just unbelievable, and I think there's problems. I'm not, like I said, there's doctors are needed. Everything's needed. There's antibiotics are being prescribed, and we'll talk about that. Actually, you know what? Let's talk about it right now.
Let's do it.
I'm on a roll here, and I'm upset. So, antibiotics in particular, I am for antibiotics, so I don't want anybody to think that I'm not. But they are being handed out like candy right now. And I talked to somebody about this recently, and they completely just butted heads with me. Unbelievable. But so antibiotics, broad spectrum antibiotics, great thing to medicine. So they basically just go in and they kill everything, all the bacteria. And this is why they work so well, is because we don't have to target a certain bacteria that's causing an illness or an infection, whatever it may be. So the broad spectrum, so they go and they kill everything. Mm-hmm. Oh, that sounds wonderful. But guess what that's doing? Your gut microbiome in your body is supposed to be there. And whether there's good or bad there, they're supposed to be good. But most of the time, in people, probably 95%, don't know the numbers, so don't quote me on that, have bad bacteria that shouldn't be there anyways, regardless. That antibiotic goes in, it clears out, sterilizes your small intestine, your colon, where your bacteria is supposed to reside. Mm-hmm. We are a house for tens of thousands of different species of bacteria that's supposed to be there. And guess what happens when you take an antibiotic? Up to 2 years after you take an antibiotic, they've tested people that they have one species of bacteria left in their intestines. 2 years later, that's the effect of one broad spectrum course of antibiotics. And I'm not saying they're not needed. They're needed for certain things, but they are being handed out. Because if you go to a doctor and you have a cough or you have some certain infection, regardless if it's viral or bacterial, in medical school, I'm not saying all of them, but sometimes they're taught to heal the peace of mind more than they are to heal the infection, to heal the patient, right? And so if you have a viral infection, they're going to go in, they're going to give you an antibiotic, and you're going to leave being like, wow, this is way better because you went into the doctor getting something. I mean, I'd sure be upset if I went to the doctor and paid $500. Mm-hmm. He goes, well, if you just change your diet and you sleep a little bit, you drink some extra water, you'll be better in 7 days. Or if he gives you this medicine and he goes, well, you'll be better in 7 days if you take this. Guess what? You're still better in 7 days. Mm-hmm. Didn't matter. You just feel better because you're getting a placebo.
Definitely.
I sure as heck know that I want that pill because I paid $400.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a problem. There's a problem, but the doctors are going along with the population because the population wants this quick fix.
Right.
We always do. We want that quick fix. We want the quick fix for everything. So there's the problem here and there's the problem over there. So everybody needs education. I'm just saying, like, once again, I don't know everything, but I can tell you right now, talking to like 13 different doctors, 20% of their medical school of current practicing physicians. I don't know currently because, like I said, I'm going in this upcoming year, but current practicing physicians said that 20% of their medical schooling was on nutrition. That is unbelievable. 20% of it. And guess what? Nutrition is life. If you don't eat food, you die. Right. If you don't drink water, you die. If you don't take medicine, you don't die. Unless unless it's the illness that you need the medicine for. But if you started out as birth and you don't need medicine right away, but you need food, you need water, and no, they don't teach that. 20% of it, medical school? Are you kidding me? Like that needs to change, and that's what I'm trying to like be a big advocate for. And so, and this is another aspect of why I wanted to come on this podcast is because what people don't understand is that lifestyle, food, exercise all leads into mental disorders as well, and nobody recognizes that. They think that this is just external. But guess what? If you go to the doctor and they give you a pill for maybe this diazepam or like I said, an SSRI, so a serotonin selective reuptake inhibitor, which is basically just keeps serotonin. And so you have a synapse, and it basically just allows the neurotransmitter serotonin to stay in that synapse longer. So basically it's just tricking the body into thinking you have more serotonin than you actually do, regardless. But they give you these pills, but they don't look at your diet. And what people don't recognize is that your gut is actually what produces the majority of your serotonin, the feel-good hormone, as well as GABA, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. So serotonin is a neurotransmitter that people only affiliate with the brain, but it's produced in the gut. And what people also don't know is that the gut, and this is what I was taught in school, is that the EC cells are what are responsible for producing serotonin in the gut, this neurotransmitter, which is a feel-good hormone, which is basically linked to, if you have low serotonin, people affiliate that with depression. And so these EC cells that I was taught in school that produce serotonin, that's flawed. We know now, like, this is newer research and I truly hope that everybody looks up and double checks me on all this, because if you double check me, guess what? You're doing your own research. Good for you. That's going to make you learn. And that's what I want people to do. I want people to learn. Don't take it from me. Do your research. Believe me, that's what I'm a big advocate for. But anyways, so what we know now is that the bacteria in the gut and the diversity of this bacteria in the gut is largely what also produces serotonin. So if you think of like the gut and the microbiome, so basically all these different bacteria in the gut that are basically, we are the house for. There's tons of, a human has 25,000 different genes approximately, and there's about 6 to 10 times more genes in bacteria in the microbiome than the whole human genome. That's how much of a bigger factor the gut and the microbiome play. And so there's also something called the vagus nerve, which links the brain to the gut. So that's why when you get anxiety or butterflies, you always feel it in your stomach, right? It's the vagus nerve. So that's the reason you're like, why am I?
Crazy.
I'm thinking about this, but I'm feeling it. That doesn't make any sense, right? But also, so this vagus nerve has tons of nerves, has 9 to 10 times more nerves running up from the gut to the brain than it has from the brain running to the gut. So what that means is that the gut runs the brain. This gut-brain axis, or otherwise the gut is referred to as a second brain, runs the brain as well. And so people don't understand that. And so when you're low in your food, which literally affects your gut, because that's what is responsible for absorbing the gut, or absorbing the nutrients in your gut, that's what plays this role in producing serotonin, things like melatonin also. And when that's inhibited, then from the foods you're eating, you have all this inflammation, then you can literally cause depression and things like that, because you're down-regulating serotonin and different things like that. And when you take these antibiotics that kill off all this different bacteria in your gut, and there's not much of a diversity, so there's not these tens of different thousands of species, we know now that there has to be a diversity of bacteria in the gut to produce this serotonin. It's not just one single bacteria or species that's producing it. And so if there's not this diversity, then you're not producing the serotonin, and so you're down-regulating it, so then people automatically jump to SSRIs, and so then you get this whole down scheme cascade effect. But also, what people also don't know is that SSRIs are actually now being tested to increase bowel movements. And the reason for that is because people don't know that serotonin is also released in the gut to initiate bowel movements through peristalsis, which is just like a rhythmic contraction of the intestines. Okay, so that's what moves your bowels and what moves you to poop, basically. And so that's why people with like IBD, irritable bowel disease, and like constipation, they're starting to use SSRIs to increase that serotonin in the body to initiate a bowel movement for constipation. Okay, so that's another reason why serotonin plays such a big role in not only the gut but also in the brain, and it sends it to the receptors. And the food literally is the first thing that interacts with the gut. And so people don't associate that. And so people out here in this like normal American diet, they're eating all these pro-inflammatory foods. Oh, it upsets me, man. So like I said, this whole like me cure my eczema and keratosis pilaris, I don't eat gluten. I don't eat dairy. I don't eat any sugar. I don't eat artificial sweeteners, no vegetable oils. I read all the food labels because guess what? Like I just said, you need food to live and you need water to live. So you don't know what you're taking. You don't know what you're eating. So if you go to the doctor and he gives you we go to the doctor in this day and age and he gives you a antibiotic, or we'll go with the antibiotic because that's the issue we're on right now. So he gives you this antibiotic and you read the label, don't you? You read the label to know what the directions say and what you're supposed to take and when you're supposed to take it and how much you're supposed to take. Do you do that with your food? food is necessary for life, why don't you do that with your food? If you don't eat the food, then you die, but nobody cares what's in their food. Nobody cares how much they're eating. Nobody knows what they're eating because guess what? How are you supposed to know? How can you calculate all these calories in your head? You can't. And so you have to weigh it. And guess what? Like I said, I practice what I preach. And the only reason I can say all this is because I weigh all my food. I don't push this onto anybody, but I'm experimenting with myself.
Yeah, so awesome. Well, yeah, we'll pick up right where we left off. So 1 second, and we're gonna take a little break. You are listening to the Coffee with Demons podcast, but CWD isn't just a podcast. It's a human collective focused on issues surrounding mental stability, healing, and battling your inner demons. Our mission is to provide new, alternative, and easy-to-access mental health help for those stuck in life's dark times. CWD is a hub where everyone is welcome and no one is judged. Check us out at www.coffeewithdemons.com. All right, so we're back, and to kind of just give my 2 cents on everything you were just saying and all the kind of scientific jargon that you're putting out. The things that stand out to me from what you were saying is I think there is a definitely a problem in medicine geared towards money in today's day and age, and I definitely think there is a problem in trying to
get a peace of mind when you go to the doctor.
That peace of mind rather than having that that actual fix. So the only thing that I would really have to add is talking about the gut biome and everything, and I agree 100% that health or food is health, and that's food is medicine. I think that's 100% true. My next kind of question for you is, so there are disorders, there are demons that do come out in eating disorders like anorexia, bulimia, and people do struggle with food, indulging in food a little too much, and I myself, food, I love food, always will. So it's hard for me to get, and it's not hard for me to get behind because I'm a layman to what you're speaking on. So my question for you is there a point when you're walking that thin line of trying to eat healthy to fix things? Is there a point where you could be doing the opposite and not being able to enjoy that cookie, not enjoy that cake?
I understand. This is a question I get every other day.
So before you answer that, I'm gonna ask you personally, do you think 100% that you've been happier now than you ever have been?
I'll toss in 200%. I can promise you. The effects, the thing is here, so.
But were you ever a person that struggled with food in the sense of you wanted it all the time, you ate large amounts?
And the reason why I did is because I had this healthy lifestyle, but I had cheat days. And so these cheat days, they refueled that craving that I needed. And so when I completely cut out those cheat days, or like on Saturday, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna eat these cookies, this cake. I dieted for 6 of the 7 days. I'm okay. So that you can't do that. There's no this whole like, a little bit's okay, a little bit in moderation, that's okay. Do you do a little bit of cocaine in moderation every single day? No, you don't do any. Why? That's the same thing. Like a little bit in moderation. That's such a dumb explanation to like make you invalidate your reasons for things. You don't need these cheat days. Eat a healthy lifestyle. Eat the earth provides you with the food that you need. You don't need all those artificially produced things. You don't need that. And what people don't know is that, like we talked about the gut and the bacteria in the gut, and there's certain things in the gut that eat certain different foods and certain molecules. Okay, so just like complex carbs are for the good gut bacteria. So I'm just going to classify the different bacteria as good and bad, okay? So the good bacteria, okay, those live off of like fiber, complex carbs. Those are supposed to be there. That's why people say eat vegetables, eat fiber, things like that. It's good for us. People say, people preach that, obviously, right? But bad bacteria live off of things like saturated fats, sugars, things like that are in all this food that people are eating. So like vegetable oils and different things like that. Okay, so all these bacteria that are living there, and like I told you how the vagus nerve has 9 to 10 times more nerves from the gut to the brain, and so they drive what you want to eat. And so if I have these cheat days and I'm constantly refueling these bacteria and never letting them completely die off, because bacteria are very good at becoming dormant. So when you go on these yo-yo diets where you refrain from these bad foods for a little bit, but then you get back on them, those bacteria are still there. You need to have this be a chronic thing where you completely refrain from these things to completely kill off these bacteria.
But is there a point, so say I diet, well for 6 days, my 7th day is a cheat day, and I know that bacteria, because I even know that, junk food, you're going to crave junk food when your gut has that bad bacteria in it. So do you think it's bad for somebody who, enjoys food and doesn't want to, give up kind of the sweeter things in life to diet that 6 days, indulge that 7th, and then tell yourself, be strong of mind and say, I'm craving these foods, but if I don't give in, so my question for you, I guess, is one day taking years away from your life if you're just, eating whatever you want?
Yeah. So there's so much to this. So this one day, like I was talking about, you are constantly refueling these bacteria that are making these cravings in you, and you're never letting them completely die off. And so they're running rampant in your intestines, and you do not want them there. They are not good. And so the reason why is because people affiliate the whole calorie in versus calorie out. That's the main driver for the fitness industry right now. Nutritionists, you see a nutritionist, they're gonna say, what's your caloric intake? We got to burn more than what you're intaking, right, to lose weight. That's there's a component to that, but it's also flawed. And the reason why is because we now know, this is like rather new, like 5 years ago, that the microbiome also is the main contributing factor to the caloric intake and what you actually deposit into your body. And so this good bacteria versus the bad bacteria, if you have this bad bacteria, say that you're more efficient at, we know that these bacteria extract calories from the food you're intaking. So this is why when a baby is born and they're supposed to get breast milk, because they now know that 10% of these calories from the breast milk are oligosaccharides, which are just a sugar basically that fuel the bacteria that's supposed to be in the gut of the baby. And when a baby is on formula, it doesn't have that. And so it runs rampant with all these other bacteria that aren't supposed to be there. So we know that calories feed these bacteria, and these bacteria basically insert this and put this into our body. And so if we're more efficient, say that we're 2% more efficient at extracting calories because we have good bacteria, none of that bad bacteria, and say this equates to 50 to 200 calories a day because we're 2% more efficient or 10% more efficient, whatever the number may be, and 3,000 calories is 1 pound of fat. Over a year, you're going to add up maybe 1 or 2 pounds of fat. Over 10 years, you're going to have 10, 20 pounds of fat. Guess what? Now you're on this binge of like, oh, I thought I was eating healthy, but I binged 1 or 2 days, and why am I still overweight? That's you can't fall into that. And so guess what? When you cut out these cheat days, because I used to do this, like I'd have one cheat day, and I'd have these cravings, but when you completely stop that those cravings go away. It takes about a month or 2 months to completely get those bacteria gone, but those cravings completely diminish. Completely, it's gone. I swear, I do not ever crave sugar. I don't. The other day somebody asked me, they're like, so if you could eat anything that you ever wanted right now, regardless of what it's in it, what would you want? And I go, well, first off, I'm not hungry because I do time restricted feeding, so I don't eat. I only eat for like 6 to 8 hours out of the day, and we can talk about that. But I was like, first, I'm not hungry, but if I had to choose anything, I was like, well, I'd probably have some salmon and some sweet potatoes and some mushrooms and some asparagus. And I just started salivating. I was like, oh, that sounds great. Because the good bacteria, that's what they live off of now. I don't have that bad bacteria to even think about the sugar. That's not even there anymore.
So is there a connection between the bad bacteria and these like cravings to actual taste buds and what tastes, and I know a lot of taste is, with anything sweet, it's going to be, your sugars, but is there anything like, are your taste buds connected?
So the whole taste, your palate changes. So with the foods you're eating. So just like when you were a kid, you didn't like certain foods, like things like, so these are called filiform papillae. These are the taste buds. That's what they're called, filiform papillae. And these are what are responsible mainly these ones. There's a bunch of different ones. There's 2 other ones that are responsible for taste, but these are the main proponent of what changes when you're from a kid to an adult. And that's the reason why like you didn't like broccoli when you were a kid, because your palate changes. And that's the reason why when you stop eating these bad foods, your palate changes over about like 2 to 3 weeks. It'll probably take about 3 weeks, and you won't have this craving. That's why, like, if I even smell canola oil, I gag. Like, I can't even stand the smell of fast food. I can't even stand it. If I even eat oil, like, I will throw up. Like, it's that like profound to me now, because I forced my body to change, and I got out of that. I broke that connection with food. Like, I don't have that like mental tie that I need this anymore, because I didn't feel it. That's the main thing. You cannot feel that addiction. And so then the big problem is that people right now, like especially like people my age, they look at me like, oh, just have a little bit, you'll be fine. Don't you ever live? Gosh, it must suck living that lifestyle. You don't eat anything good. I love what I eat. I love it. It makes me feel great. And you don't have to indulge in other people's, like, you don't have to validate other people's reasons for the food they're eating. Mm-hmm. They're trying to break you, because it's validating the reasons for why they're eating the way they're eating. Because if they can break you down and make you feel like you're on their level, then you just made them feel like it's okay what they're doing. You're human too. Mm-hmm. But if you tell them no, it's like, wow, like, maybe I'm not doing the right thing here. I don't know. But and I know you talked a little bit about like anorexia and food like that, or not food, excuse me, the disorders around food like that. We know that, you know, if you're anorexic, it actually decreases the brain size of someone by 20% or some number around there, and that's largely plays a role in, and that actually affects how you look at yourself, right? And that's going to affect personally what you're eating and various things like that. And I think, you know, people need to be more aware of the good foods and like why and like how it affects them, but that's not out there.
Yeah. For mental illnesses, I guess it's just not as easy as going out and telling someone who might have anorexia or might have any eating disorder, telling them, you know, laying out the facts, that like you did. Yeah. And you know, because they might, kind of going back to the social media thing, people will take whatever they believe as their truth, and they'll hold that as their truth for whatever they see on the internet, and you know, they believe what they want to believe. So
the reason people say, oh, why don't you just live while you're young? Why don't you? I would choose rather now to make my best decisions now while I'm my strongest than to make a decision in the future when I'm my frailest. I would rather mitigate and make me live the healthiest life I can for the longest I can when I have control over it, when I can do what I can when I'm young, than do it when I don't have as much control because I don't have the power to do it. Maybe I'm old and I'm weak and I have all these diseases. People don't think about health until their health's in the can. That's the problem. Yeah, I can eat whatever I want until, now I'm sick. I got to change something. I feel terrible. This hurts. But why don't you change it before you feel sick? And I mean, controlling it when you're young, like, okay, so we also know that, so say that somebody who becomes obese, okay, because you're eating the way it's okay, I'll take care of it later, it's not, I'm gonna have fun, I'm gonna do whatever I want to do, it's okay, weight's okay, whatever. But guess what? So we have something called leptin in the body, which is a hormone, which is also linked to the gut, by the way, but we can talk about later. But leptin basically tells your brain is, okay, I'm satiated, I don't need to eat any more food. And so the first problem is that people eat too fast, because it takes about 20 minutes for your brain to receive that signal from leptin that says, okay, I'm full, let's stop eating. And so if you pile all this food into your mouth, then you don't recognize that you're full, and then you overate, and then it's too late. Guess what? You don't even know how much you ate. But we also know that, say that somebody who's trying to lose, because they're obese, and they try to lose 10 to 20% of their fat, your fat's the main organ, is because fat's considered an organ actually, that produces this leptin. Okay, so then your brain wants that leptin, and when you take this away and you no longer are producing this leptin because you have less fat on your body, and now you just lowered your metabolism by 22%. So your caloric intake, so we'll do some numbers here. So say that you were 175 pounds and you wanted to get down to 150 pounds. So if your caloric intake at 150 pounds was say 2,000, okay, but then you dropped your weight down from 175 because you figured that was obese, okay, for whatever height it may be, but we're just going for hypothetical terms here, 175 pounds. When you drop back down to 150 pounds, your new caloric intake for 6 years is 22% lower because of that extra leptin that was in that fat that you gained that your brain now wants back. It's harder for you to lose fat. It's easier for you to gain fat now because you were fat. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's 22% lower, your caloric intake, just from that 10 to 20% of fat lost. So 175 back down to 150. You might have to eat down now to your basal amount of 100 or 1,500 calories in order to be 150 pounds. When before you were overweight, you could eat 2,000 calories at 150 pounds. So this is why people that go on a diet and then they come back off to eating just healthy and not really knowing what they gain that weight back, because it's so much easier to gain the weight because your caloric intake now dropped 22%. So that's why, like, when you can control it now, why would you rather not just never become obese than become obese and have to deal with losing that? Because it's hard.
Right.
When you lose those and that fat that you kicked out of your body that produced that leptin and is telling your brain, I want food. And nobody wants to go through that, because when you're hungry, you're going to eat. Right. You want to eat. It's hard to say no, right?
Yeah, so I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here and give you just a couple scenarios. Basically, my whole thing for life is, like I've been saying, is be happy, do what you want to do, whatever that is. If you're happy, that's goal numero uno. And I know if you haven't ever heard any podcasts or read any of David Goggins' books, he's a ultra marathon runner.
Yeah.
Marine. So and I don't have a problem, but I am going to talk about a little bit of what that I think he does. So he preaches breaking through plateaus, breaking through walls, pushing yourself, and that's good for goal oriented. I think, in my opinion, that's good for goal oriented, motivation and whatnot. But at what point is does the layman need to take a step back and say, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe my life isn't, maybe I don't need this whole gladiator mindset. Maybe I don't need to, eat eat strict. Maybe I want that, maybe I want to have fun and eat the cake when everybody else is, or have a beer when everybody else is. And I think society has, hundreds of years it's been rooted in food around gatherings, whether that's friends, family, or even around strangers. So I think that'd be one, it's written ground into our society. But basically for me, I agree with what you're saying. I definitely think that it's wonderful information to get out to the world. But at what point do some people need to kind of take a step back and say, everything is good in moderation, but when is it in? And I don't even know, because
I see what you're saying.
Right. So, and how long have you been doing this, I guess?
So I've been leading a healthy lifestyle for over a year and a half. Like I said, I've been working out for 5 years, but it wasn't until I transitioned over to this for a year and a half. But then I've done the no gluten, no dairy, no sugar for the past 3 or 4 months. Right. And I've seen profound changes in my body. So
it'll be interesting to see a couple years down the road, whether that's 5 or 10 years, and, kind of check back to where you are today, because it would be 100% great if you had the same mindset, you were just as happy or even happier. You kept doing what you were doing. But and I don't know enough to speak on like what's gonna happen, but in my head that you don't know what tomorrow brings, and for me personally, and like I said, I think the information's great, but for me it'd be so hard to change my lifestyle, and I think it's hard. So you could kind of attest to that.
The reason why I advocate so hard for people to do their own research is because I know what the foods do to me, so now I'm terrified of them. So it's pretty darn easy for me to not eat that sugar or eat that chocolate bar. It's pretty darn easy because I know physiologically, biologically, biochemically, whatever you want to say, what it's going to do. And just for sake here, okay, we'll talk about gluten and things like that, and like how it affects the intestinal wall, how that leads to problems. So gluten is this long chain protein. It's very sticky, and basically you have these microvilli in your intestine. Basically, if you think about them as bowling pins, okay, and you think about like gluten, which is a protein, it's very sticky, long, not digestible. And these bowling pins, which are microvilli, which are responsible for absorbing the nutrients out of the food, and this gluten comes in, it wreaks havoc. It just crushes these bowling pins, right? Just destroys them. So what happens is our intestines are one cell layer thick, and there's a mucosal lining that they're produced by Akkermansia muciniphila, which is just a bacterial species that produces actually the bacteria in your gut. And this bacteria produces mucus. This mucus is responsible for trapping these lectins. This lectin is a type of gluten, or gluten's a type of lectin, which is a protein, like I said. And this gluten, this mucus that traps this gluten, when it goes through and it wreaks havoc on your intestines and crushes these microvilli, then it impairs this one cell layer thick lining in your intestines. And there's these, how your cells are held together in your intestines is called a tight junction. And so what that does is it doesn't let things pass through it, because you don't want all these exogenous things like bacteria and stuff getting into your bloodstream, because it's a direct link to your bloodstream and your circulation from your intestines. And so that's the reason why tight junctions are there. And so when this gluten goes in, it wreaks havoc. It knocks over these microvilli, which an analogy was the bowling pins. Now you have separated tight junctions, and it just free reign. You let all these different bacteria, all this different food, all these proteins are not supposed to be in your blood. And so all these different things, which we now term leaky gut. So you just change the permeability of your intestines from this gluten you're eating. And now all this different protein, things like that, like I talked about, bacteria get into your bloodstream. And so you have this autoimmune reaction to it. So you have this inflammation and immune response where all these antibodies, which are just like the defense mechanism for your body, start like running rampant. And they're like, well, what are we going to do? And so they basically go and attack that. And so this is where autoimmune disease like Crohn's disease come from. And people don't recognize that just eating gluten can cause that, right? Because it separated that intestinal lining.
So my thing from just hearing that and going back to something that you said earlier was people don't want to change their habits until it's kind of too late, or until their health is in the can. So I think as a society, rather than I think health will always be important, but I think as society we need to focus more on like knowledge, learning for yourself, not taking things at face value for whatever the doctors say and whatever anybody says. I
would definitely like to talk on that real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because taking things at face value is the problem also, because so if you think we'll talk about eggs, because they're so vilified. Okay, what's right, what's wrong? Do they cause heart disease? Do they cause increase in cholesterol? But then this study says they don't. And so that's because of the media. The media picks and chooses what to tell you because it's clickbait. And so what they usually do is, these are called epidemiological studies, meta-analyses, observational studies, same thing. And so what they do is they basically look at, in terms of eggs, we'll talk about eggs really quick. They basically looked at a subset of people over 15 years, and they gave them a food questionnaire where they said, okay, how many times a week did you eat eggs over the past 2 years? Do you know how many times you ate eggs every day for the past 2 years? I sure as heck don't. I don't even know if I ate eggs 2 months ago. And so what people do is they guess. They guesstimate, right? And they put this down here, and then so what they do is, that's what a meta-analysis is, an observational study, and it looks at this and they say, okay, so did it increase over time? And so there was it was like a 0.2% increase in heart attack, which was the positive correlation with the increase in egg consumption. But for science, they said that it has to be a twofold increase from a meta-analysis, which is a 100% increase in something that's occurring, to actually correlate it and, like, I guess, seek causation. So they're correlated, but they're not causation. Because, for instance, cigarettes, okay, we knew that there was I think it was a 20-fold increase, which is like 2,000% increase in cancer from smoking cigarettes. So that's why we knew that this meta-analysis, okay, is probably causing cancer, right? And so when people don't understand what's truly going on in the research, then this media can just go in and pick and choose. Okay, well, there's a 2.2% increase in heart disease from these eggs, so eggs cause heart disease, right? They're not lying. I mean, if you looked at the study from the outside looking at it but don't know what you're looking at, then yeah, sure. When you clearly 0.2% increase in eggs, so heart disease, yep, that makes sense. But
so I definitely, like I said, I agree. I definitely think the media, picks and chooses what they want to learn, but I don't think it's just the media reading it. I think research needs to be better, just being in the psychological field and having a great professor that is advocating for our values or Bayesian stats over like our values, which is for the layman just kind of narrowing down that to if it is significant, if this is the cause, and or if it's even correlation, because correlation doesn't ever exactly. So I think it's just a problem of the work that people are willing to put in or the effort that they want to know about their health.
And this is also a problem, is because I want to get into this really quick, is because we aren't being told everything purposely, because it's easier for them to market and sell things that we don't know than if we did know them, because I sure as heck know that if I knew what was actually going on with GMO crops, that I'm not going to eat that. And for instance, we're going to talk about this really quick, because so I'm dairy-free, gluten-free, sugar-free, and I eat all organic. And people go, wow, organic, that's expensive. Yeah, it's a couple bucks more, but I can guarantee you that couple bucks more is going to save me hundreds of dollars in medical bills. And the reason why is because the reason why organic is so much different than non-organic food or GMO crops, things like that, is because these crops or meats or anything like that are either sprayed with pesticides, glyphosates, things like Roundup from GMOs are from Monsanto, the large majority of them at least, and these pesticides that are sprayed on them, Roundup, which Monsanto didn't tell anybody. Okay, they did not tell people this, but it was patented as an antibiotic. That is the reason why it works so good, is because there's something called the shikimate pathway that plants go through, and that's basically just the reproduction pathway. And so when this antibiotic comes in here, it basically, these glyphosates and things like that stop the shikimate pathway, and it turns it off, and the plant or the bacteria die. And so the shikimate pathway is also present in bacteria. That's why this antibiotic of Roundup works on bacteria. And so when you're not eating organic food and it's sprayed with pesticides like Roundup or it's GMO, and because GMOs are just genetically modified organisms that basically they just I put a lectin, so kind of like a gluten molecule, into the plant to resist insects and things like that, to basically kill the insect if it eats it. Because lectins are plants, basically their survival mechanism to not be eaten. There's the defense mechanism. And so that's why it's bad for humans. But anyways, so this pesticide, that's an antibiotic, and so it's in your food. You're constantly microdosing with this antibiotic, and so guess what? You're inoculating your gut bacteria as well. And this shikimate pathway is present in the gut microbiome that you have, this bacteria, because that is the reproduction pathway for bacteria. It's called the shikimate pathway. And so when it turns the shikimate pathway off, then it basically, like I said, inoculates your gut, sterilizes your gut. Over time, you're constantly microdosing with it. So why does this matter? And the reason why it matters is because, so there is a vet in the Midwest, so around where we're at actually, that he found out that if he gave cattle tetracycline, which is basically an antibiotic, okay, tetracycline, that it increased growth rate of cattle significantly. And so they're like, oh, well, heck yeah, we're going to give all these cattle antibiotics. We're going to make more money off them when we slaughter them. There'll be more meat. That makes sense. Marketing, oh, for sure. Yeah, why not? But so we know now that antibiotics increase weight gain, because once again, if you think back to what I said about bacteria, good bacteria versus bad bacteria, extracting calories, no bacteria, and you're less efficient at it. So no kidding, no wonder you gain more weight. Because once again, all the bacteria is gone, the good bacteria, bad bacteria. So if you're constantly microdosing with this antibiotic from this non-organic food, then you're constantly killing the bacteria in your gut, and you're basically shooting yourself in the foot. You're never, sure you can reach your goals, but it's going to be sure the heck a lot harder than if you didn't eat these non-organic foods.
But what if someone isn't goal oriented in the fact of fitness, losing weight, and health overall, and just kind of being, and I happiness is health, like health is happiness. But what if someone is, living their daily life and they're happy, and so they're still eating that fast food, they're still eating, the junk food. What's going to be that turning point, or do you ever think there will be that turning point because people are living long lives, and people are still.
Well, actually nowadays, people are living not as long as they were in previous years. It's actually now a trend's changing that people are actually dying younger now than they did in the previous years.
So
first time ever, actually.
And that's crazy to think about, because we may never truly know why. Like, yes, food might be getting a little bit more unhealthy, but X can, X can lead to Y, but what about Z? There's other things that no one's the same, and I don't think that we'll ever be able to categorize people, keep lifestyles the same to know what truly causes. We know cigarettes.
No one is the same, and that's why when you have two people that go on the same diet, they get different results, because guess what? Their gut bacteria is different. It is dependent 100% on the food you are eating. Your gut bacteria is present 100% on what you are intaking. It doesn't care where you live. It doesn't care what you feel. It doesn't care where you came from. It doesn't care who gave birth to you. It is 100% dependent upon the food that you eat. I can promise you that. And so that's why I said two different people that eat the same calories will get two different results.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll take a little break, and then we'll be right back on it. All right, and we're back. So the last little segment's going to kind of be wrapping things up, so I'm going to hand it back over to Jordan to kind of
Yeah, so I was talking quickly there about two different people eating the same caloric intake and gaining different weight. Also, so there was an experiment done where a marathon runner who's in very good shape ate the exact same calories, and their cousin who was obese, they took the bacteria out of their intestines, inoculated it into the marathon runner's intestines. Without changing the marathon runner's diet, they gained 30% more weight from the bacteria that they put into the marathon runner who ate the exact same food. Okay.
So basically what you're saying is like the gut biome is individualized.
Yes.
100%.
Yes. Okay, it's individualized, but it also literally fuels your longevity, your health, your weight, your cardiovascular risk, your heart disease risk, your plaque buildup. Various things like that is literally runs it. It runs it, and you need to pay attention to it. And like you were talking about, like I'm going to get criticized for, I eat out every single day and I feel wonderful. Guess what? Your wonderful feeling is your new baseline feeling, because you don't know what like being healthy truly is, because your baseline is now at the point that you're always inflamed. So that's your new baseline. You don't know what it truly means to feel healthy, because your healthy is now out of whack. That is your new healthy. Like, you don't know what it means to be on this, like, no inflammation, nothing like that. Like that's where you're at. And so I highly recommend people just try it for yourself. Like I said, it has done immense things for me. And
so kind of you talked about your upbringing and how you used to have cheat meals and whatnot. Yeah. So were you ever in a point of, was there ever some demon, or did you ever face like depression, and then you kind of did this and now you're 100% problem free? Sure. I mean, no one's problem free, sure, but I definitely think you should kind of attest to that.
So if you recall back in the beginning, I talked about how 2 years ago I transitioned over into like a different lifestyle and find my passion for medicine. A large proportion of that had to deal with my injury from working out. I've had plenty of injuries from working out. Actually, I've had an inguinal hernia. I tore a muscle off my skull. I various things like that. I mean, I've always had these aches and pains, screwed up my joints, all this, just stupid things that I was doing wrong. Okay. And so after my inguinal hernia, actually, I kind of took a step back, and I was like, what am I doing? I'm not getting anything, because before I knew it, like, we were talking about how I had this imposter syndrome where, I was always feeling second class. I was trying to bridge this gap from working out, and I never reached that goal, because when I was in bed rest from basically the hernia, because I had it laparoscopically fixed, so I had 3 incisions on my stomach, and I had a mesh lining in my inguinal canal, which basically stopped the protrusion from my intestines from poking through my muscle. That's what happened with an inguinal hernia. And so when I was bedridden and I couldn't work out, I was like, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to go insane, because guess what? I was still in that like struggling phase. And but what it made me realize when I got back to the gym, it made me realize that I was at a point in my like working out endeavors that I never took into account, never like relished on. So what happens when people get so infatuated with the gym and things like that is they first off, when you get to the gym, you create a goal. I'm going to gain 5 pounds. I'm going to lose 5 pounds, whatever your goal is. And guess what? You gain those 5 pounds. You didn't even take the time to recognize that you gained those 5 pounds. You didn't even take the time to sit back and be like, wow, I did it. Because guess what? You already created a new goal. Your new goal might be to gain 10 pounds. It might be to lose 10 pounds. And so you keep making all these mini goals, and before you know it, it's just this cascading effect that you never sit back and go, wow, I really did it. And so it was like a humbling effect to me, because I saw that, like, I was like, wow, I completely changed myself. I completely changed the way I look in the mirror. The mirror changed in front of me. Had all this strength. I'm like, I never took the time to sit back, think about like how I was interacting with people, how like the goals I achieved. I never thought about that. And so I was like, wow, I need to take my time and like really incorporate life and take head on into these like mental problems I was having. And so I started talking with people, and, you know, I saw a psychiatrist twice just to try it out, because I was like, I don't know if this is for me. You know, it wasn't really for me. But then I found my solace in just like finding like friends who I talk with. That was my like safe haven. It wasn't seeing a psychiatrist. I just did it because it was a free offering from the university. So I was like, why not? I'll give it a shot. Just like the Coffee with Demons. I hope somebody sees it and goes, why not? I'll give it a shot.
Exactly.
Just like I did. I never thought I would need to go to a psychiatrist. Heck no, I never thought that. And I was like, why not? It's free. I'm going to go try it. And I did. It wasn't for me, but then I found it, like, gave me the motivation to find a different safe haven. And I found this with my friends, and I talked to my friends about things, and, you know, it taught me to like, I guess, take these demons head on and to face them and to fix them and to fix what was truly happening. And so, you know, I talked to my mom a lot, and we were good. Now I forgave a lot of people. Even if they don't forgive me, I forgave everybody. You know, I don't have any ill feelings towards anyone. And that's a big thing, and that's a big step to take. It doesn't matter if someone forgives you. As long as you can forgive them, like, you'll feel better. I promise you that.
So what was this shift in your mental state or your psyche to go from, well, I guess not to go from, but to help people? Like, you want to be healthy yourself, and I know that I talked about being a little bit selfish, and you have to be a little bit selfish to, you know, live a happy life. So what was your kind of shift in your mental state to, you know, still have that little bit of selfishness, but want to go out and, you know, share this information with people and how it helped? And or what do you think? Do you think you do it because you're gaining something from it, or do you think you do it for the?
I don't. Clearly, like, I still love exercising because of, like, you know, just the way I feel and things like that. But I changed. I personally. You talk a lot about how, like you said, just the idea of thinking about the problem, like, that's your first step, and that'll get you set in the right direction, just to recognize the problem and to understand that you can change your mind and fix things from just changing your mind. And so I changed my mindset on, like, how I was acting, and the stigma, and, like, the way I was portraying myself as this, like, guy that, you know, he just cares about himself, blah, 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 likes to work out, whatever. And I changed that, and I started seeing people be very receptive to it, and, you know, in the gym, and people that I didn't even know, you know, people that, there was truck drivers that were just driving through Nebraska that walked up to me and goes, hey, man, what are you doing? Like, would you, like, help me? Like, I was like, yeah, man, sit down. I sat there for 45 minutes, didn't know the dude, never see him again, never will see him again, didn't even know his name, didn't have to, didn't care. Wasn't going to pay me, didn't want the money. I truly enjoy helping people. And, like, people they were receptive of it. The persona that I was giving off now compared to then was, like, I was a very closed off, like, you know, people could tell when you walk in the gym, like, who, like, you know, you get that feeling. You get the feeling. And, like, I was giving it off in a different light. And, like, people, like, a bunch of people actually have come up to me and started talking to me. And, you know, I have a lot of people, just like friends and other people who, like, just come up to me or message me, and I truly love doing it now. And I think it's just because I changed my mindset. And I recognized that I needed to change it, and I recognized it, and I talked to people, and I got it out there, and I faced the demons, and I got that demon out of the race, that marathon I talk about, and that allowed me to transition over. And, you know, so some things that I do personally, and, you know, I'm not an advocate. Like I said, I always advocate for this, but I'm not an advocate I'm not an advocate for pushing my values off on anybody else. I'm an advocate for teaching people and having them make their own decisions from what I teach them. And so that's why I always go deep into research, because I want people to understand what things are truly doing to you. And if you understand what it's doing to you, then it's easier for you to abide by that lifestyle. And so, once again, do your research on everything I say. But me personally, I can tell you what I do. And so let's see. Last year, I was going to compete in a physique competition just because I wanted to personally. I didn't care what anybody else thought. I wanted to see what I could do, and I was eating 2,400 calories. I weighed everything. I knew exactly what I was eating, and I got my results. And guess what? I very satisfied by it. And this year, like I said, I'm gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free. I wasn't back then. I wasn't a year ago. My 2,800 calories now that I'm eating is equivalent in fat loss to the 2,400 calories, just because of the difference in my microbiome. Because I was a yo-yo dieter. I was 6 days on, 1 day binge, maybe 5 days on, 1 day binge, or whatever. But now, like I said, I completely eat none of that. I don't eat any artificial sweeteners, no vegetable oils, anything like. So we talked a little bit about gluten and lectins, because gluten's a lectin. Lectins, there's like a bunch of different lectins. They're smaller protein molecules, whatever. Okay, excuse me. So what you can do is things like quinoa, legumes, lentils, beans, things like that. So they have a large amount of lectins in the skins. And so what I do personally is I soak them. Okay, you rinse off, especially quinoa, because quinoa has saponins on it, which is like a soapy molecule. It's very reactive in your body. It's very not good. It causes a lot of inflammation. And so what I do is I soak these grains in water, and then for a day, and then you can sprout them. So it's literally sprouting. You're literally growing the grain, basically. So what I do is I soak it for a night, and then I pour it into a strainer and let it sit in the cupboard for another day, and you'll see these little sprouts coming off. And so what that's doing is these lectins and the gluten molecules are in the skin of the legumes and the quinoa and whatever it is, the grain that you're eating. Because like I said earlier, lectins are basically a defense mechanism, so insects don't eat them. Right? Because it's either that, or if you eat a fruit that has seeds in it, the fruit's meant for you to eat the seed and then poop it out somewhere else to basically, guess what? You pooped it out, and now it has fertilizer, and you moved it away from the plant to get its own resources. That's the reason why. That's the reason why you're not supposed to digest it. And so when you sprout something, it says, okay, I'm safe here. I'm in the ground, and now I can deactivate these enzymes, and I can start new enzymes that get rid of these lectins in the skin and basically become more nutrient dense. And so that's why I do that. And so it's like it completely gets rid of all these lectins. And so I do that if I do like quinoa, or I'll eat like millet. But things like I just, a lot of like vegetables, all organic. And then I personally track what I eat just because I like to know. And I'm doing personal experiments with all this different things that I preach. And I want to know, because if I'm going to do it, or if I'm going to tell people to do it, then I'd rather at least know what it actually does. I do a lot of time restricted feeding where, I'll do 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours of eating. And so personally, I do like 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And there's a ton of different effects on that. I hope that people look up time restricted feeding. It's deemed intermittent fasting, but it's not actually intermittent fasting, because intermittent fasting is where you might fast for a complete day and then, eat normally the next day. So it's more time restricted feeding is what but so that's what I also do. And then if somebody really wants to lose weight, a good way to do that would be to do your time restricted feeding, work out in the morning while you're fasting still before you eat anything. So that means, nothing. You can have black coffee, black tea, green tea, no sugars, no artificial anything, and water. Okay, that's all you can have. You can't have any food, no pre-workout, nothing like that. No BCAAs, nothing. Anything as a caloric amount you cannot take. So what that does is basically, it allows you to mobilize fat in your body from working out when you're fasted, because so you have something called, so you have glucose goes into your blood, and then you get stored as glycogen, which is a storage form of glucose. And so you burn through that. And then after you burn through that, that's when you get to the fat. You have to get through all these different stages before you can even burn fat. And so if you ate food, you have all this glycogen and you have all this glucose in your body that you have to burn first. But if you don't have that, then it's easier to get to that fat. Okay? So I always work out fasted in the morning, and then I do a cold shower. And the reason why I do that is because it's called cold therapy. And so what cold therapy does is it converts white adipose tissue, which is what people associate with like belly fat, visceral fat. So visceral fat is underneath the skin, and it's usually held like in men in the stomach area. It's stored in something called an omentum, which is literally Greek for fatty apron, but that's where it's stored, and it's bad. So, but we also have brown fat. That's what's in babies, and brown fat is very thermogenic, and it's metabolically active because it's responsible for producing heat, and so it's not bad for you. So when you have a cold therapy, you basically, influence your body to convert that white adipose tissue over to brown fat, which becomes more thermogenesis and metabolically active. And so that's another thing that I do. But other than that, I just live that healthy lifestyle. And, if people can find, I guess, help from the things that I do, then yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I that's awesome. I implore people to, I think Jordan came with very informative information, but I also implore people to, go, like you said, go out, do your own research, learn. Don't take things at face value, and, face those demons, but also, just live your own life. It doesn't matter, you're a great example of overcoming those demons, and I think people need to realize that and kind of move on. So I guess that's a good wrapping point. So I appreciate you coming on. I thought that was an awesome podcast. Like I said, I hope people got as much from it as I did. If you didn't get anything, listen again, but seriously, do your own research. Don't take things at face value. Everything is not as it seems, and above all, just kind of love life. So, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. Yeah, no problem. As far as Coffee with Demons goes, check out a meeting near you as soon as they're available. I'll be getting the ball rolling on that. And then blogs and podcasts out as fast as I can get them. So I appreciate everyone who tuned into this, and we will see you next time. So thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Coffee with Demons podcast. Don't forget to check out our website at www.coffeewithdemons.com for more information on the Coffee with Demons movement.